Trump has just announced a sweeping new tariff on cars.
This is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs.
President Trump announced 25% tariffs against our auto industry. And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of, uniform workers I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge. A bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken. We will defend our workers. We will defend our companies. We will defend our country. And we will defend it together. You know, this will hurt us. But through this period, by being together, we will emerge stronger. I think what's happened, and this was part of our discussion, over the course of the last several months, Canadian workers, Canadians as a whole across this country, have gotten over the shock of the betrayal and are learning the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. It would be appropriate that the President and I speak, given the action that he's taken. I'm sure that will happen soon. I'm not going to give you a precise timing on that. In terms of options, which was the second part of Ms. Martin's question, even during a caretaker period of government, we have anticipated this possibility. We have put in place the mechanisms so that if it is appropriate for retaliatory tariffs, and there's many considerations to be taken in those regards, and I want to have the meeting of our cabinet, Canada-U.S. cabinet, other considerations. We need to see the details of the executive order.
Buyer beware, your next car could cost more money.
This is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs.
A very modest 25% tariff, the president says. My political sources are here, Paul Begala and Scott Jennings, along with my deeply sourced White House insiders, Zolan Cano-Youngs from the New York Times and Isaac Arnsdorf from the Washington Post. And Isaac, this was something the White House announced later this afternoon. They said the president's going to be making an announcement on auto tariffs. This is a 25% tariff on all imports coming into the U.S., and he said it starts April 2nd. Obviously, he was arguing that that will be, in the end, better for the American consumer. But what have you heard from sources about how this all came about today?
Well, obviously, Trump was elected to lower prices, not raise them. And he is betting that the long run, that Americans are going to stick with him in the long run for the. But factories aren't built overnight. And he's acknowledged that there's going to be pain in the meantime. And I've been assured by the White House that we're not going to see a repeat on April 2nd of what happened a month ago, where the markets panicked, the other countries scrambled, and they agreed, well, we have some concessions, let's work it out, let's pause it, let's delay it a month. You know, is this going to be happening every month? Are we going to have that whiplash scare every month that then gets dialed back? I've been assured this time, April 2nd is real.
Well, what happens if April 2nd is real? Because I think that's what all of these, the car makers, the automakers, everyone else who's going to be affected by these tariffs has been looking at, saying, do we need to actually prep for this, or is it going to be an exception, a pullback, whatever we've seen before previously?
Which we've seen in the past, right? And particularly when it came to tariffs on Mexico as well, and when it came to Canada. I remember that when he threatened tariffs initially on Mexico, I traveled there, talked to officials who were asking those same questions. Is this for real? Which is often the question that comes up. Is this just politically advantageous to issue the rhetorical threat of this economic penalty? or to actually go through with it. You mentioned that he acknowledged also the pain that consumers might feel. I think it's more than just he's betting that Americans will be patient here with any sort of economic frustration. That acknowledgement is also part of a resetting of expectations in a way. We have to remember that during the transition, Trump said he would bring down consumer prices immediately and address inflation immediately. Here you start to see, just in recent weeks, the president and other officials saying, hey, look, now that we're in office, these tariffs, it may come with some economic pain, particularly if they do go through with it on April 2nd.
Scott, how does the president balance that in terms of you can only, if you're negotiating and using it as a tactic, you can't really back away from it that often, or people will just always think maybe it's not actually going to happen. But how do you balance that with what consumers might feel as a result of this?
Well, you balance it by making your argument that I'm trying to transform the American economy, and while we may have some short-term pain for consumers, we're going to have long-term gain for workers. And if you look on your social media tonight, the United Auto Workers, the UAW, has put out a strong statement in support of what Trump did today. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that Trump said he was doing the tariff is because of declining domestic production. And so in the eyes of Trump, in the eyes of the UAW, the people who represent the people who work in these factories, this is a win for them. So the balance here is short-term pain for consumers, maybe, long-term gain for workers. And by the way, if everybody wants to make their stuff here, nobody's going to feel any pain at all.
This is going to go down in history. Like, you know how like Reagan had Morning America and FDR had the New Deal and LBJ, the Great Society? This presidency will be known as the Great Betrayal. He was elected by the American middle class. He won the votes of voters who make less than 50 grand a year. Just as Isaac said, they voted for him for one reason: cut my cost of living. Since he's taken office, he took office, eggs were $4.14 a carton. They're $5.89 today. Gas was $2.95 a gallon. They're $3.11 today. This is all from the Federal Reserve.
I think you're off on the eggs.
It's 100% from the Federal Reserve.
I think you're off on the eggs.
I'm just telling you what the Fed says. Rent has gone up $1 a day every day since he was sworn in. If he's not cutting the price of groceries, gas, and rent, he is failing the people who put him in office. He's stabbing them in the back. These are good people. I hate when my side attacks Trump voters. They're good people. But they put their faith in a guy who's stabbing them in the back every day. You can't have higher tariffs and lower prices.
Was he not also elected by the working men and women of this country to give them better job opportunities in the middle of this country? I mean, part of the whole animus of the Trump campaign in 2016 was the hollowing out of the American manufacturing sector.
Go tell them.
And that's what he's doing.
Go tell them that adding $12,000 to the cost of their car is going to be really good for them. I wish you luck with that.
I'm going to go tell them they're going to get a job, make more money than they've ever made.
Yeah, they're going to tell you you're full of malarkey. You're raising costs across the board. If you drive or drink or eat or dress, you're going to be paying more.
Inflation rates have come down in the last couple of months.
But I do think part of this is who's around Trump and his economic advisors in terms of how they're guiding him on this compared to last time. It does seem different in terms of no one saying, oh, you should pull back on this or you should do this. They're much more on board with it than they were 8 years ago.
I think that's across the board when it comes to the Trump agenda, that you're not going to have you're not going to have the instances that we saw in the first term where, you know, different cabinet officials are pushing back on some of these ideas. Also, tariffs were at the center, and he made it clear during the campaign of not only his economic agenda, but also his foreign policy agenda as well when it came to these nations. I don't think you're going to convince the president to walk back something like that he has made a central part of his agenda at this point.
And this is what business leaders are struggling with right now. Who can get through to him to make their case about how this is affecting them and consumers by extension? How do they reach him? You know, I'm thinking about the Business Roundtable meeting a few weeks ago, which some people were imagining as like a big come to Jesus, and ended up just being a Trump rally.
We'll see what happens there. Of course, April 2nd, everyone has their eyes on that date. Thank you all for being here.